This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Wow, Week 15 in the NFL had it all. Kansas City out of the postseason for the first time in a decade, but they lost more than the game with Patrick Mahomes tearing the ACL. We also had DEFCON 1 level collapse when it came to the New England Patriots and Buffalo Bills yesterday. A win streak extended in Denver, a grandfather throwing a touchdown pass, and so much more. How are you today?
Good. You know, despite I thought last week or yesterday was probably one of the more narrative-driven days in the NFL, if that makes sense. Agree. You know, there's a lot of storylines, obviously with Rivers leading the way. Some pretty decent contests. The afternoon slate was great on paper, and it lived up to it. I thought yesterday was a pretty good day of football for the most part, and that's besides all of the beer that was consumed. And
something we talked about while consuming beer yesterday watching the games was that the 5-game slate in the afternoon was really nice to have. All of them, the 125 kickoff, which I thought was a little bit unique, but ended up being great to have the little time in between to wrap up the morning slate before you transition in. And something that you brought up that I thought was pretty interesting as well was if you were steam chasing yesterday, it's a pretty good day for you. The line moves were pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is any different than any other Sunday. It's just it stuck out yesterday because of everything that was transpiring. But if you looked at some of the unique line moves that we saw yesterday, there was a lot that now the one I think that sticks out a ton is the Chiefs one, right? Again, for the second straight week, the Chiefs get steamed up. They don't really get there. But you look at some of the others that you had out there yesterday. What do we have yesterday for the most part? We had,
the Texans get out to double digits.
Thank you. My thing wasn't opening. Texans -6.5 up to 10. They get there. They win by 20. Jags -8.5 up to 13.5. They get there, win 48-20. The Bills, how about that? Some spots open. Patriots -1.5. Bills closes as a 2.5-point favorite, 35-31, although it didn't look like that for a little bit.
Yeah, that was the what are we missing game, not understanding why the steam was going that way. Patriots go up 21-0. We're like, okay.
What are we missing?
Yeah, this is weird. And then obviously they rally back, and Josh Allen looks all like the MVP he was a year ago.
Yep, and then so we mentioned the Chiefs contest. Ravens bet up from 2 to 3.
Sure.
Not an insignificant line move at all. They shut out the Bengals 24-0. Packers get bet, or the Broncos get bet up in that game, right? Open 2.5, down to 1. Broncos win the game outright, 34-26. The Rams 4.5 up to 6. They get there 41-34. Cowboys and Vikings last night. The Vikings get the money, open 6.5 in some spots, closes 4.5. Vikings get the outright win, 34-26. So that I don't know how it's been with these line moves week to week, but yesterday it stuck out because it did seem, and we should also note, although from the opener it closed a little bit higher, the Colts got action late. They were at 14, got cut down to about 13 pretty much across the board. Never really in doubt when you're talking about covering that number for Indianapolis.
We will continue to react to that game and all of the action that we saw on the Week 15 Sunday slate. Throughout the course of the next 2 hours, we do have a jam-packed show on deck with all that is to come. So like we always do, let's real quickly set the table and run it down.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
So one of my favorite segments we do each and every week on a Monday is react to the weekend that was and call me crazy. But we have some pretty strong opinions, one of which being, I don't know why I continue to bet this team in a certain situation, and I will not do it again. So excited to have that conversation a little bit later.
And dare we say the birth of a Super Bowl contender yesterday.
From a quarterback that you would not expect JVT to be complimentary of, no less. So that'll be a fun exercise a little bit later on in the program. We will also hit Do You Approve This Move, looking at some of the movers and shakers already from the Week 16 lines. And we mentioned Patrick Mahomes' injury off the top, but with his absence, with Micah Parsons and the torn ACL and a handful of other injuries across the league, we've seen a lot of movement already, like massive swings in spreads and totals, as well as a flip of favorites in one game that's not injury related, and we'll tell you why.
Yeah, one of these situations looks a little too easy on paper. There's a side that immediately I was looking through the card last night, early this morning, and I was like, man, that seems too easy to kind of harp on at this point. We'll talk about what that is, but if it's too good to be true, then it probably is.
Okay. We also have a ton of awards markets that we're going to dive into, some new leaders in the clubhouse, some favorites extended, and but it is a Monday, which means Week 15 isn't over yet. We got Monday Night Football on deck today from the Steel City. The Dolphins visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers today. Pittsburgh a 3-point home favorite, total 42. And for Miami, after what a slow start they had to the year, 1-6, have since reeled off 5 wins in their last 6 games, 4-game win streak entering today. But we'll have to put a massive Steelers streak to the test, JVT. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not lost a Monday night game in Pittsburgh since before I was born. They've won 22 straight home Monday night games. Last loss October 14th, 1991 against the Giants when it was Three Rivers Stadium. And Mike Tomlin in general as the Steelers coach, 21-3 on Monday night. Isn't that wild?
We confirmed that one last week when we were talking about that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Steelers winning a Monday night game in 2003 probably doesn't matter today, but they have performed very well in this situation. Man, I don't know what to do with this. So Miami, you mentioned the run that they're on. They're 4-2 against the spread in the 6 games that you talked about as well. So I kind of broke it down of okay, let's talk about Miami first. What has changed over the course of this winning streak? And when you dive through some of the numbers, the thing that really stuck out to me was their running game. Devon Achane's been great throughout this entire stretch that they've been on. Some differences for you. Weeks 1 through 7, he ran for 472 yards, 5.3 yards per attempt, 3.96 yards per carry after contact. He had 12 runs of 10 or more yards. That's a really acceptable set of statistics. But since week 8, 654 yards for Achane, 6.3 yards per attempt, 4.23 yards per carry after contact, and 23 runs of 10 or more yards. To put it a little bit simply, too, his explosive run rate in terms of attempts, percentage of attempts that go for 10 or more yards, first 7 weeks of the season, 13.5%. Since week 8, 22.1%. He's become more explosive. He's become more physical. And by extension, this offense has looked way, way better for Miami.
And Mike McDaniel, I think, does such a great job, too, scheming up different creative ways to get him the ball as well outside of just the run game. But obviously, yes, the yards per carry tell a big story in and of itself when it comes to Devon Achane. There was a little bit of concern for him health-wise this week after he injured the rib against the Jets. But he, for all accounts, appears to be good to go and will be facing a Pittsburgh Steelers defense without their best weapon today. The biggest injury news of the Monday night game being TJ Watt out after needing surgery to repair a partially collapsed lung this past Thursday, had surgery. The injury reportedly happened during a dry needling session at the team facility. And while he's certainly out tonight, there have been some conflicting reports about when he will be back available. I saw Tom Pelissero say they're optimistic about getting him back next week. Adam Schefter said it looks like it would be an uphill battle or a challenge to get him back. So we'll take that off of the table, at least for now. But looking at this week, I thought this was pretty interesting, JVT. Steelers just 1-10 in the 11 games without TJ Watt since 2017. Opposing offenses also averaged 6 more points scored in games that he wasn't out there on the field, 56 more yards per game, and the defense averaged 1.5 fewer sacks per game as well with him unavailable.
I think that makes a ton of sense here. I do wonder how much it does factor into a game like this where I think the weapon, the main weapon, if you will, for Miami is going to be the run game and trying to avoid throwing the ball that much. To the point, too, of this turnaround for Miami, one of the things that also has been helping them, the pressure rate for Tua Tagovailoa has dropped significantly. Weeks 1 through 7, when they were, just this moribund, disjointed team, he was getting pressured on 30.9% of his dropbacks. Since then, since that Atlanta game, 25.3%. And now, with TJ Watt not out there, one's going to assume that is probably going to maintain in terms of only getting pressured on about a quarter of his possessions. Having said that, and this is what gives me, I think this is a relatively well-priced game. I think, to me, it would be Miami or nothing. The thing that bothers me about looking over this run that Miami has been on, Tua has not cut down on the turnover-worthy plays at all. In fact, his turnover-worthy play rate has gotten worse. So weeks 1 through 7, again, I'm using this barometer again because that's when they were losing all these games since they've been on this winning streak in 5 out of the last 6. That's why I've kind of cut this in half here. But if you look at the first weeks of the season, so weeks 1 through 7, turnover-worthy play rate 5.2%. Since then, 5.6%. So he's still putting the ball in danger, and yet he's improved his touchdown to interception ratio, 1.1 in the beginning portion of the season to 1.75. To me, that screams unsustainability. Can you continue to get away with putting the ball in danger at a higher clip than you were when your offense was playing as poorly as it was? And if that expires, when does it? Does it happen tonight against Pittsburgh Steelers? Does it happen in a week when they take on the Bengals, I think, next week or whoever it is? I think that's something that it really kind of bothers me with watching Tua and looking at his profile coming into this game.
Well, and that defensively they've been taking the ball away as well. Yeah. So it's like they've had 2 things that have really been working effectively for them. The turnover differential in general over this 4-game win streak has been great, yet you imagine that's got to catch up with them and that you're not going to have the positivity that you've had on defense either. They have also defensively, over this 4-game streak, held opponents to the fewest points per game in the league in that time. Now with an Aaron Rodgers coming in that you don't believe in necessarily, big picture, struggles to get the ball downfield, although we finally saw him start to do that a little bit last week. And Jaylen Warren, also their starting running back, woke up, I guess, this morning with an illness, needed fluids. And so the expectation is that he's going to be fine to go today, but maybe not playing truly to his capabilities. How does that change at least, or maybe shape the way you view this game for the Steelers offensively?
It's why I really don't have a read. And I think that's fitting, right? These are two teams, Miami 6-7, Steelers are 7-6. They've kind of been all over the map with some of their results. You don't know exactly what they are. And to your point, too, I mean, what are we getting from Miami or from Pittsburgh's offense? You mentioned the throws downfield for yesterday or last week, for those who don't know, 20-plus yards attempt downfield. Against Baltimore last week, Aaron Rodgers 4 for 4 for 152 yards. The previous 11 starts for him this season, he only had 11 completions for 320 yards. So, what am I getting? Are we getting this hyper-aggressive guy that's going to throw the ball downfield and actually start to attack a secondary, as we've discussed all year long, and has issues? Or are we going to revert back to the low average depth of target, picking and pawing and trying to do a little bit at a time as opposed to trying to get pretty aggressive? Maybe it's a sign that they're getting better and that his connection with these guys is getting a little bit more aggressive. He can go to his back shoulder throws, the things that he's comfortable with. But these two teams, there's so many different little volatile spots you could point to and go, man, I could see any one of these. And by the way, I guess it's cold, so I guess that means Tua is going to lose.
Over the last 13 games for Miami that has started in sub-40-degree weather at kickoff, they are 0 for 13 straight up. The last 10, 1-9 ATS. So there's that layer of it, too, for you.
For audience, why the caveat?
So last week's game against the Jets, you might be like, oh, well, it was super cold in that game. Kickoff temp was 42 degrees, so it doesn't count toward the stat. But
2 degrees colder, he would have lost.
Okay, we're just getting started here on Money Moves. When we come back, has the market swung too much or not enough in the Chiefs' Week 16 matchup following the Patrick Mahomes injury? Plus, while the headline in Green Bay is Micah Parsons, as it should be, I'll tell you another reason Cheesehead Nation should be really concerned right now. We've got it all and more next on Money Moves.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Money Moves, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Remember, you can make the season unforgettable this year with Omaha Steaks from Holiday Roast and hand-selected gift packages to so much more. Omaha Steaks is delivering top-quality meals and memorable gifts to bring everybody together this December. Every steak is perfectly aged and hand-carved for exceptional flavor. And right now, as a VSiN exclusive, you're getting 16 free smash burgers with any order of $129 or more, plus 50% off site-wide. Head over to omahasteaks.com/VSiN. That's omahasteaks.com/VSIN. Minimum purchase may apply. Please see site for details. We got a lot to get into as we're coming off a busy Week 15 Sunday in the National Football League. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you here for the next couple hours. The big news, of course, a pair of torn ACLs to monster stars in this league, Patrick Mahomes and Micah Parsons. And let's start with the Mahomes of it all here for Kansas City, as they, for the first time in a decade, are not in the NFL's postseason. They lose their stretch of AFC West titles. And for a guy in Patrick Mahomes that had been dealing with a knee injury for a while, to see him go down in that fashion, you knew it was bad right away. He tweeted afterwards, don't know why this had to happen, and not going to lie, it hurts. But all we can do now is trust in God and attack every single day over and over. Thanked the Chiefs fans for their support and said, quote, I will be back stronger than ever.
Yeah, I mean, so going forward, Gardner Minshew will take over for the Kansas City Chiefs. You do have to wonder, so they get the Titans next week. What is the mentality of a team like this? We just threw this up. If you're watching at VSiN.com, you see the success that this team has had.
Crazy.
The core of this team, where just ripping off double-digit wins left and right. We know what it is. Winning the Super Bowl as many times as they did. Going to it as many times as they did. The consecutive AFC Championship game appearances. Just a high level of success, sustained success, and you're used to that success. Well, now you're out. Mm-hmm. Now you've got to play meaningless football for the next 3 weeks, and you have to do it without your best player in Patrick Mahomes, who you just lost, of course, to that injury. What is this team like going forward? I mean, I'll stop beating around the bush. Titans feel like, doesn't that feel too easy? This was the side that I was referring to, that the Titans next week can catch a team that is not used to playing in this situation with a bad quarterback now starting for them and a bunch of old guys who probably don't want to play these games. don't you get caught sleeping here?
So from a numbers standpoint, the look ahead on Kansas City, they were a 10.5-point road favorite in this spot. They're still over a field goal. 3.5-point favorites in Tennessee, total 37.5. That came down 3 points as well. But yeah, it did surprise me a little bit, especially considering another thing that kind of threw me off of Kansas City and the line movement in their favor getting out to as high as it did yesterday was the offensive line issues that Kansas City has. And it hasn't looked good. They started yesterday's game down 3 starting offensive linemen and then had their fill-in right tackle injured early in that game as well. So I don't foresee that situation getting much better for them. And the Titans have been able to put some points on the board too. So this could be a more intriguing matchup than people are giving it credit for, and you're getting that extra half a point at home with the Titans.
And look, and I'm sorry, but I don't want to hear about, like, Gardner Minshew immediately goes out there. He throws 5 passes. One of them's intercepted. It was a brutal interception. Could have driven him down. Didn't really need to go that far to get him in field goal range to potentially just tie the game against L.A., but Minshew's been a very poor quarterback throughout the course of his career. It's funny. You go back to just a few years ago when there were many who thought, I think it was like 2022, hey, just give him the job for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you can see that they'll go to the next level. Hasn't been the case for Minshew. And so that's part of it as well. Look, he can escape some pressure. He's not a statue like Phillip Rivers, who we'll get to. But I just think the quarterback play, obviously a massive drop-off. The offensive line issues are there. It's a team that is not used to playing like this, that probably doesn't want to play these games. It just seems – and by the way, we should note with the Titans, look, they have their quarterback. Yeah. There is no, hey, let's, play young guys and let's do that. No, they're trying to work out kinks. They're trying to get this thing improved by the time you get into next year. I think that there's a lot here that points to Tennessee, but we'll see. 3.5 right now. Well,
and I know during the Chiefs' most recent stretch, they've been faltering to largely pretty good teams, over 500 teams for the most part, but they still have dropped 3 straight in 5 of their last 6 with Patrick Mahomes under center. So it's not exactly a ton of confidence that I have in this team. And we talked so much last year about the 1-score games. Last night, another 1-score game that they lose this year, 1-7 in the 8 1-score games that they have played. That said, big picture, I did think this was an interesting soundbite that we had from VSiN's GM Shuffle podcast from Marty Herney talking about Kansas City Chiefs fans, maybe just chill out for a moment. The future is still bright.
Patrick Mahomes is still going to be the franchise quarterback of this team, and they're still going to win a lot of games and maybe even Super Bowls moving forward. I think that just the shock of everything all at once, not only did they get eliminated, but basically in the same minute they got eliminated from the playoffs, they lost their star quarterback and probably the best quarterback in the league right now. So everybody's sort of trying to handle this mentally. Everybody just needs to take a step back, and I think it'll all take care of itself like, it does with other NFL teams.
The only thing you see is Jake Delhomme looming over the shoulder of Marty Herney over there in that picture. I think, big picture is fine. It's funny. I think it was social media is such a cesspool at times, and there's some idiots on there. I saw I think it was a well-known Chiefs fan account tweeting out like a projected mock draft that they had done. In the first round, they took Jeremiah Love to save the offense. In the second round, they took Diego Pavia.
Okay. Now's the time to draft the quarterback of the future, and it's Diego Pavia, because that makes sense. Let's shift gears now to Green Bay, because Micah Parsons also was confirmed this morning after the MRI that he too had a torn ACL. If you were watching, similar thing, like you knew it was bad the instant it happened. And he is somebody who I think is fair to say transformed this Packers defense overnight. How do you view their big picture Super Bowl aspirations now following the injury?
I don't know, man, because that defensive performance, even when he was out there, actually really wasn't that great.
Still forced a fumble and
I wonder. I think they're good enough defensively, because I do think we should give them credit. It's not like they were a sieve before Micah Parsons got there. They're still one of the better run defenses in the NFL. I still think they can maintain being one of the better run defenses in the NFL. Having said that, they're not going to be as good. And I think, to be honest with you, after watching yesterday, if we're just focusing on the Green Bay side of it, I don't want to undersell the loss of Micah Parsons. To me, watching that game, it was more about, dude, are you going to score a touchdown anytime you get to the red zone at some point? Mm-hmm. They kept settling for field goals when they got inside of the 30 or the 25 of Denver. They weren't converting them into 7, and that made a big difference in terms of the score. At some point, you got to find the end zone. And some of the shortcomings from yesterday, I think, fall a little bit more on this offense and big picture as we move forward. What have we talked about with Green Bay almost every time they come up short in some of these games? It's the offense gets disjointed. It's the offense isn't really doing enough. There's a few games in which the defense hasn't really stepped up, but I think in totality, if Green Bay is not going to achieve what they are moving forward, the Parsons injury will matter, but so too will this offense that continues to put forth some really inconsistent efforts.
When we get to call me crazy, but I have another opinion on the Green Bay side of it all that we'll get to. But I did just want to put this out there as well. From what the Packers defense is going to be without with Parsons off the field, he entered the game with 10 more pressures than any other player in the league. His 66 pass rush wins this season are one fewer than the next 5 defensive players on the team combined. No player in the league has accounted for a higher percentage of his team's pressures than Parsons. He had the 3rd most sacks in the league, first player in NFL history, by the way, with at least a dozen in each of his first 5 seasons. And when he's off the field, you could tell pretty quickly, too, Bo Nix, is able to pick on those corners now because he has extra time in the pocket and you don't have the threat of that pass rush coming at you at nearly the same rate. So that's important. And some other injuries that we need to keep eyes on coming out of that game as well, most notably Christian Watson, who at least the reports are optimistic that he's going to be okay, but he had to go to the hospital with a chest injury.
Yeah, we saw that. We thought that looked really serious the moment that happened. So, this team now all of a sudden you look at Green Bay. We were going to talk at some point about the NFC and the powers that be in the NFC and how it looks like the conference looks way better than the teams at the top of the AFC as they continue to just kind of cannibalize each other or beat each other up. But you can kind of eliminate the dominance at least. You can kind of take Green Bay out of that conversation, and I think you're kind of almost down now to 2 teams, and even then. Seattle didn't really look that great on offense over the weekend.
Dude,
again.
And we're going to talk about that game and the Phillip Rivers of it all coming up next, as well as a handful of awards markets that we've seen numbers shifting in, and could there be a buy point on a couple other names? But with just to put a bow on the Green Bay of it, we said last segment, these teams that got steam ended up winning. And that was one for Denver, where they were a 2.5-point dog. They ended up closing a 1-point underdog. They win this thing 34-26 at home. And you got to give them a lot of credit for what they have done to now push their win streak to 11 straight games and just finding different ways to win throughout the course of the season.
Well, and now, as it looks, in the driver's seat very much for the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yes, if the playoffs started today, that's where they would be.
Yep, one of the 2 teams that beat them, Indianapolis, is not going to make the postseason, and then New England took a loss yesterday. It seems like all roads will go through Denver potentially as we head to the postseason. Still 3 weeks left, but they're very much in favor to grab this top overall seed.
The Packers coming up this next week, Sunday Night Football. They've gone from a 3.5-point favorite on the look-ahead down to 1.5 in Chicago in that rematch with the Bears from just a couple weeks ago. Total 46.5. That'll be a good one. Okay, when we come back, like I said, there's some awards markets we need to discuss. Matthew Stafford out to a $3 favorite for MVP right now. And Patriots running back Travion Henderson has surged to the top of the odds board for Offensive Rookie of the Year following a pair of 50-plus yard touchdowns. But is there another player on the board at double digits we should be talking about? We'll get to it all coming up.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Of the 5 double-digit dogs we saw yesterday, when all was said and done, only one of them covered. Who was it? Your Indianapolis Colts, led by Big Phil, Old Man Rivers. The Colts were getting close to 13, so they were getting bet a little bit yesterday in Seattle against the Seahawks. And almost pulled off the upset, just couldn't close it out. How are you unpacking this performance from Phillip Rivers yesterday?
Yeah, so I think I want to take a moment because, I got a lot of this yesterday about the arrogance of my selection for the Seattle Seahawks at minus 20.5. And with a lot of thought and watching that game over again this morning, I'd like to take an opportunity to say that I was right. You're all wrong, and I'm not going to back off this stance in any way, shape, or form.
Are we going to get a Jonathan Von Triggered now?
No, not at all. But Phillip Rivers stunk yesterday. I understand that we can separate 2 things, okay? You can enjoy and somewhat celebrate the fact that Phillip Rivers decided to give this thing a shot at 44. I think it is a mistake, or I don't know what's a lapse of judgment, if you will, the Indianapolis Colts, to have their quarterback roster in such a situation that they felt like they needed to do this. I also don't understand why they asked him to come out of retirement only to call a cowardly game plan in which they didn't want him to do anything. Case in point, on the final drive, when on the 3rd and 7, they run the ball up the middle to set up a 60-yard field goal that was made but did not eventually win the game. I didn't really understand that aspect of it all. I think the Indianapolis Colts defense deserves a ton of credit for how they played yesterday to put that team in position to potentially win the game. I think we need to talk again about a Seahawks offense that over the last 3 weeks, and we'll exclude the half against the Falcons, that second half where they kind of opened it up against them. But Darnold and the Seahawks offensively have looked bad for like 3 weeks now, and I think that's part of it as well. But for anybody to come out and say that Phillip Rivers was serviceable and this was decent and that they're going to, no, there's no way you can watch that offense and that production and not think, with the news today, that Anthony Richardson, who is now cleared to practice, should be starting for them moving forward if he's healthy.
Yeah, that was the report this morning. I don't know if anyone might have missed it, but he was cleared to resume football activities. And so we'll see what that looks like for this coming week. But Phillip Rivers, the final stat line, 18 to 27, 120 yards passing, touchdown, did have an interception. I will say, from just a narrative storyline perspective, it was really cool to see all of the kids that are on his high school team watching the game together and losing their freaking minds when he scored a touchdown pass. That said, are we sure that Riley Leonard couldn't have also done that? Do we need to go through this whole rigmarole to bring him out of retirement for this type of a performance? And on the Seattle side of it, too, we were watching this game together, and we kept screaming at the screen, why are the DBs so far back when you know that they're going to just dink and dunk with Phillip Rivers the whole way home? And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, there was a couple of plays where they're playing 10 yards off, and you're just like, what's happening?
Where's the threat?
Yes, and he's checking it down to Jonathan Taylor, there's not even a defender on the screen. They got to come in, and I don't know, maybe that's just the strategy, but almost every time, I don't know why you're not just daring him to try to throw this ball downfield. Average at the target, by the way, for Phil Rivers in this game, just 5.2 yards downfield. And that was very much buoyed by the fact that he tried to take a shot on the play that was eventually intercepted. I thought it was pretty incredible. And look, the Colts have some problems on offense. We'll see how this moves forward, but I don't think there's really any question. This isn't a Anthony Richardson is the truth thing. He is a guy that you spend a top pick on. He is younger, he's healthier, he can throw, he's got a rocket arm. You got to see what you got here in the last 3 weeks. That's now all but lost.
And we told you that we were going to discuss some awards this segment. How about Phillip Rivers? 5-1, second shot on the board now for comeback player of the year.
Stop.
Okay,
There's no shot.
We're not even going to warrant that discussion. Christian McCaffrey, odds on, more than $2 favorite in the market.
Yeah.
But the fact that Phillip Rivers played one game and has been cut down that significantly after we know specifically that the voting criteria for this award has shifted over the last couple of years for exactly this reason, when Joe Flacco won a couple years ago in 2023.
After he didn't play well either.
That said, let's move it ahead to
second choice.
To MVP, because Matthew Stafford now a full $3 favorite in this one after the big win over the Lions yesterday. And if you had Detroit +6, I feel for you, especially with the way they performed in the first half. Makes you feel like you're going to be in a really good position. Unfortunately, though, for the Rams, Davante Adams, who's been on the injury report for the last couple of weeks with a left hamstring injury, seemed to catch up with him. He pulled up lame at the end of a route in the fourth quarter. And with the short turnaround to a pivotal game against the aforementioned Seattle Seahawks coming up this Thursday, Matthew Stafford was asked about potentially not having his number 2 target this week.
Obviously an outstanding football player, a huge part of our offense, a guy that's, put it in the end zone a bunch for us this year. And so, that'll be a tough one. I don't know the extent of it. It didn't look like it was a good one. So, feels so tough for him. He's been a warrior for us all year, really, to be honest with you, playing out there for us. So, we'll see. I got a lot of faith and trust in the other guys that we have in our locker room and our coaching staff to put us in a great position to go out there and let our play do the talking and just go play.
Yeah, it is unfortunate to see him go down like that. He has been awesome. Fortunately for Matthew Stafford, though, he still has Puka Nacua and a lot of other weapons available if Davante Adams isn't available on the short week or moving forward. But what did you make of Stafford's performance? We talked about the weaknesses of that Detroit secondary, and he teed off on them.
Yeah, look, everything's right with the world, I think, now when it comes to MVP.
Yeah.
We had talked about this when I think it was post Monday Night Football against the New York Giants, where May had retaken the lead against him as an odds-on favorite. 368 yards, 9.7 yards per attempt, 72 in terms of the passing grade for PFF. But like you said, 12.8 average up the target. He was taking shots downfield. He was completing them. It was a really impressive performance against a playoff caliber team. Something that with the Patriots, Drake May finally ran into, against the Bills. And second half, offense kind of wilted outside of one Travion Henderson run that kind of gave them a little bit more life. So I am with you. and that this is where this market should be. And I would expect that he is going to win the MVP and that we're not going to dip past anything in terms of odds-on status for Stafford as we move forward.
When the Patriots were up 21-0, we saw the odds start to tilt back in Drake May's favor, and it is interesting when you see those lines populating live during the games. And I think Drake May got down to as low as plus 105 and Stafford around minus 120 in that market. So just worth noting. So now Stafford minus 300 compared to Drake May at plus 425. Meanwhile, also coming out of that game with the New England Patriots, TreVeyon Henderson, who, when we had this Rookie of the Year conversation a week ago and even leading into the games yesterday, and you asked me about TreVeyon Henderson, I said, I don't know if we can make that bet because of the way that Vrabel has deployed the running backs. Can we trust that Henderson's going to get enough touches, enough looks in big positions? He has 2 50-yard touchdowns yesterday and has catapulted himself now to a plus 185 short shot on the board.
Do we buy that? I mean, I know I asked the question, and I tweeted it out too. Should TreVeyon Henderson, is he going to be the favorite or the co-favorite? And that was more me saying, hey, these odds react to everything.
You called the number, though. We said, maybe co-favorites plus 180.
Yeah. So that was more of hey, are the odds really going to do what they usually do and kind of swing back and forth and do whatever it is? And so the reason why I ask is now we've reached the point where he probably shouldn't be, he's not playable at this point, Henderson, because, look, big game, also kind of part of a split in the backfield for some inexplicable reason. So maybe he's not going to get the production or the touches moving forward to eventually take this for Offensive Player of the Year. So the popular name that is now being thrown out there is Saints quarterback Tyler Shuck. He's about 25-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year. Again, over the week, or excuse me, yesterday, I always do that. Yesterday had a relatively strong performance in beating the Carolina Panthers. 24 32, 272, 1 touchdown, ran the ball 8 times for 32 yards, won the game. Do we buy that Tyler Shuck could actually make this push to win in what is, admittedly, a pretty weak Offensive Rookie of the Year class? I don't think it's so much about his production as it is nobody above him has really stood out.
Well, that's what I was going to say is Igbuka took a step back. Tedero McMillan, we were asking the question, rightfully so, last week of should he be odds on. Jackson Dart isn't really doing anything to really inspire confidence, and especially with the Giants continuing to lose. Meanwhile, Tyler Shuck steps in, and the Saints all of a sudden are winning games. And their offense looks like a pretty decent unit. He and Chris Olave have had this awesome connection. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. It's not a bet that I want to make, but I think if he continues to, upset the apple cart the way he has, it could be a worthwhile play or a number that at least is going to get shorter as we go.
And we should point out for the New Orleans Saints, as you move forward, your last few opponents here, the Jets, the Titans, the Falcons.
Yeah.
Those are 3 defenses that Shuck could perform relatively well against and close it out.
Also wanted to point out, too, just to close out our awards conversation, Mike Vrabel, following that downfall, collapse yesterday against the Buffalo Bills, no longer an odds-on favorite for Coach of the Year. He's still the short shot at plus 120, but...
Did I send you this tweet?
What?
I'm going to read this. I believe Doug's last name, Farrer. Doug Farrer, NFL writer. A lot of worthy Coach of the Year candidates, but the line begins with Shanahan.
I love it. Who's 10-1, by the way, now, but it still feels too long at double digits.
Yeah, Doug had retweeted your boy Albert Breer, who had noted no Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner, no Brandon Ayuk, assorted other injuries, Purdy, Kittle, missing chunks of the season. Niners are 10-4.
Finally, people are listening to us. By the way, if you want to bet smarter this season, including, having the opportunity to listen to Money Moves and podcast form, you can also get VSiN as a perfect gift for yourself or the sports bettor in your life right now. Take advantage of our holiday special. You get VSiN Pro access, everything we do through May 1st for just $79. Don't miss this limited time special. Head to VSiN.com/subscribe and unwrap your betting edge this holiday season. VSiN.com/subscribe.
Put on your tinfoil hats.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. The whole world gone crazy.
For Call Me Crazy, but...
I'm going to step in. I have to get this off my chest. Call me crazy, but why in the world is Philip Rivers starting another game? What are we doing? The second we go to commercial break, Shane Steichen on the podium tells the media that Philip Rivers will start against the San Francisco 49ers a week from today on Monday Night Football. This, of course, comes hours after the report that Anthony Richardson is healthy and potentially available. Call me crazy, but maybe don't start the 44-year-old grandfather who couldn't surpass 120 yards yesterday through the air.
And also, can I tell you, the market seems to love and believe in Big Phil because the 49ers on the look ahead were 7-point favorites, and I believe they're 5.5 right now. So, getting played.
I can't believe this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. So it's pretty clear, too. I mean, Shane Steichen hates Anthony Richardson? Can I start my own Shedeur Sanders type conspiracy theory right now?
Well, now he's got a real veteran in the room that he can learn from. Isn't that exciting?
I can't. This is honestly.
You're actually living a nightmare right now. You're living a nightmare.
Apoplectic? What is the word?
Apoplectic? Is that right?
No, that sounds right. That sounds wrong. I'm
gonna Google it. Figure it out. On that note, we talked earlier about, of course, the Micah Parsons injury for the Green Bay Packers, but
apoplectic.
That's what I said.
You said apoplectic.
Oh my gosh. Here is Matt LaFleur on the podium discussing not only Parsons, but a handful of injuries that popped up in the Broncos game yesterday.
A really tough night in a lot of ways in regards to losing the football game. Give Denver a ton of credit. That's a really good football team. I thought it was a dogfight for most of the game, and then they kind of ran away with it in the second half. But it was also a double whammy for us, just losing some pieces that are critical for our success. But that's the name of the game. I told the guys nobody's going to feel sorry for us, and we got to rally around one another, and everybody's going to have to elevate their play.
The pieces he's talking about, by the way, so in addition to Parsons going down with the torn ACL, Christian Watson had to go to the hospital with a chest issue. We're still waiting to see what that might mean for him moving forward. Also, their right tackle, Zach Tom, goes down, linebacker Quay Walker, safety Evan Williams. And this is not new. After you already lose Tucker Kraft for the season, your starting center Elkin Jenkins was lost for the year, Savion Williams dealing with a foot injury. All of this to say, in what is a very competitive and challenging NFC at the top, call me crazy, but the Packers Super Bowl hopes are toast. I am so out on this team now with all of these injuries mounting.
Wow, totally done. Completely done.
Donezo.
Can they win a playoff game?
I don't think so. I wouldn't pick them in a playoff game.
Wow.
It depends on who they get. Let me put that. Depends on the matchup, who they get.
Wow, so the Carolina Panthers in a rematch. You're going sharp teeth to claw?
If they get, Carolina's not making the playoffs now.
They got 2 games in front of them. I don't know if I'm as out on you as Green Bay, as I've called myself Packer curious, but they continue in big spots to not perform well. And then, of course, the injuries, as you're mentioning. I still think the ceiling's good enough that maybe you make it to, an NFC Championship game, depending on how the bracket breaks. But having said that, it's hard for me to realistically, should they meet them, take them over like a Los Angeles Rams, given the state of the roster right now, what we know about it.
I do not trust them against a good team. I would not qualify the Panthers as a good team. We'll get to them in a moment. What's next on your list here for Call Me Crazy?
You know what? I, when presented with new information, like to change my mind. I think that's what people do, or at least what they should do. Call me crazy, but folks, if Bo Nix plays like that, Broncos can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that yesterday? 37 dropbacks for Bo Nix. He goes 23 of 34, 302 yards, 8.9 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns. We'll ignore the 4 turnover-worthy plays yesterday. He played really well. Like a lot of moving in the pocket, drawing defenders, finding guys downfield. That was arguably his best game of his career, I think. Coming in a big spot as an underdog at home to the Green Bay Packers, I don't think they're going to get that. But if you bottle that up and you tell me Bo Nix is this dude for the rest of the season, this is the question we've had about the Denver Broncos this entire time. You give that defense that offense.
No.
That's the best team in the AFC, no question.
And I'll say, for as much as we have talked about the Kansas City Chiefs this year, right, and their regression in one-score games, the Denver Broncos have had a complete reversal of fate in that area from where they were a year ago. They were 1-6 in games decided by 8 points or fewer last year, 10-2-1 in one-score games since.
Yep.
So, that has been a massive change for them. And I know that we haven't seen the full game performances as much as we would like from Bo Nix, but it seems like he's putting it together more than the fourth quarter lately. But the fourth quarter stuff is what's been most impactful with these wins and losses.
Yep.
So I do not think you're crazy. That said, call me crazy, but you don't bet the Panthers as favorites. And I knew this. I knew better. I just cannot get out of my own way on this team. They fall to 0-12, JVT, straight up their last 12 games when they close as the betting favorite, yet they lure me in week after freaking week. How do you beat the Rams and the Packers and then get swept by the team that's in last in the New Orleans Saints? How do you give up a 10-point lead in a revenge game and give up the opportunity of a lifetime for you for a team that has not won the division since 2015? You have everything set up for success for you if you win this game to then be the leader in the clubhouse if you get a split with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is no longer the case, and it is on no one but you. And I am so frustrated that I knew better. You don't bet on the Panthers as favorites. They can't handle it.
I think you said it well. I don't have anything to add.
All right, next for you.
All right, call me crazy, but folks, the Spurs might be a legit title threat in the Western Conference.
Dude.
We should talk a little hoops here, and what a weekend for the San Antonio Spurs. It was funny, I was making fun of, just jabbing Will Hill a little bit, because Will, over the weekend, I don't know if you saw the clip from Victor Wembanyama, who said something along the lines of, I think that when I'm coming back, I'm the best player in the league or the world or whatever it was.
Yeah, because he was asked by, I think, Malika Andrews, like, who do you think the best team in the league, player in the league is right now? And he listed Giannis and who and Shea.
Jokic and Shea. He listed them all.
But he said, when I'm on the court, I think it's me.
Correct. Will Hill, our buddy, was like, well, make the playoffs first. To which I responded, like, well, it's his third year, and, he had a blood clot. I don't know if we really put that on him. And then Victor Wembanyama heard Will Hill, and then he went out there, and then the first 10 minutes on the floor was plus 20 and was helping the San Antonio Spurs upend the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah. This Spurs team now in the NBA Cup final, and Victor Wembanyama yet again looking like the best player in the world. This team, you've mentioned it, we've talked about it, they did more than just tread water when he was gone.
Yep. 9-3.
They've got good, young, solid pieces. They're a good defensive team. I don't know, man. We might need to be on the lookout here because Victor Wembanyama might be the best player in the NBA right now, and this Spurs team might be on the verge of, dare we say, cutting the Thunder dynasty short.
9-3, like I said, in the 12 games that Victor Wembanyama missed. And I want to give you some credit. I know you don't like taking compliments ever, but when we had Zach Cohen on the program last week, and we were talking about just how dominant the Oklahoma City Thunder have been. When are they going to lose a game? It feels like they're not. And then you said, if Wemby comes back for the Spurs, could be this week. And then what happens? Unbelievable.
Absolutely. And remember, too, to that point about not only the record for the Thunder in terms of the 74 wins and winning streaks, all these sort of things. Mm-hmm. They will play them 2 more times right before Christmas, and I believe they play on Christmas, if I remember correctly. So, in other words, they were going to play San Antonio 3 times over the course of these next 11 or 12 days. So, San Antonio, if they're legit, we'll see if that's the case. But, dude, these young guns that they've got, what a game for them in the semifinals. Final stat line, too, by the way, for Wembanyama in 21 minutes, because he's coming off of the bench. He's got a slight minutes restriction. 22 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. He was plus 21 in 21 minutes.
I have kind of a dumb one here. Call me crazy, but it's impossible to read articles online now. Every single day that I'm trying to do research and prep for the show, or I see some breaking news and I click on the link, you have the first pop-up that comes and takes up the whole screen that you have to X out of. Then you've got the banner ad on top that actually only lets you see about an inch or two's worth of the text as you're scrolling to try to read said article. And then you've got another pop-up video in the left-hand corner or right-hand corner, and it's never ending. And sometimes, I don't know if this happens to you too, it'll shift the article all of a sudden when just a new ad will pop up in the center. What do I have to do? Who do I have to pay to just eliminate or limit my pop-up advertisements on websites? Can we make the federal government put a limit on some of these organizations that they're just not allowed to do this? It's crazy.
I feel like there's a lot of things I would like the federal government to take care of before.
Yeah, but they're not doing any of that either, so at least help me out in my daily tasks.
I think I can get it. Really quickly, last bit of here, I'll just say, call me crazy, but I think Duke and Arizona are on a collision course, and it's right in the Final Four. Arizona, over the weekend, as we saw them take out Alabama, 9-0 now to start the year. I think the big takeaway, though, is as we look at the Wildcats, Very quietly in that game, in 34 minutes, Braden Burries, their young freshman guard, comes out with 28 points on 11 and 19 shooting, had 7 rebounds and 2 assists. Burries has quietly been putting it together. He has 20 points in 2 of his last 4 games. This was kind of like the piece you were waiting to see if this was going to happen. And Duke's just great. Cameron Boozer's awesome. If all of a sudden you've got a scorer like Burries and this Wildcats team around him is pretty good, look out. I think Arizona is going to be awesome, and Duke has already been great. I know we all talk about Michigan.
Yeah.
These are my 2 teams right
But
now.
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say Michigan, Arizona, and Duke look like just like a 3-headed monster of teams at the top right now. And it's a clear line of demarcation of who's well beyond after that. Okay, we got to step aside. When we come back, we will close out the Week 15 NFL slate tonight in Pittsburgh. Dolphins have done well to keep their slim playoff hopes alive, but are 3-point road dog tonight against a Steelers team trying to maintain its lead in the AFC North. We're stepping into the prop shop next, discussing which prop angles could be worth a look in the Steel City.